I got my days, even though I'm coming up on 6 years sobriety and 15 years in recovery. I mean, I'll have the blankets over my head, in my head. I'm a gong show. And, seeing the demons and tackling them at full force isn't always the funnest thing to do, as you know.
Our guest, Ryan Phillips, man, hey, we're kind of in the same boat a little bit here. Thanks for joining us on Knockin Doorz Down.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, anxiety society these days. Holy Christ, if there was a poster boy in Canada for mental health, I think they'd have to make bobblehead doubles of me. Christ. So, but
one of the US of me, buddy.
Well, we'll put us all together in the same box, as long as we're not judged too much, so
we'll be collectibles.
Absolutely. In the collective.
Yeah, in the collective. Well, I mean, speaking of, I'm assuming, I know for me, with my addiction, primarily alcoholism, man, fell off during this pandemic. Did the pandemic just screw with you a lot?
Well, I mean, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, it's taken its toll on billions of people in the world. I'm a sensitive guy, recovering addict. And I mean, I guess we all have our own lived experience, but at the end of the day, it's been a Jedi mind, blah, blah, blah. It's, it's like almost like time has stood still. You don't know which days, one day to the next. It's taken its toll. And I think on all of humanity. And I think it's time for, a lot of people here just to really step up, rise up, and do the best we can to really be there for each other in all aspects of life. And, I always say there's opportunity in chaos and, coming from a very chaotic life and, just really trying to be there to help each other through these times. They're turbulent. They suck. Yeah, they do. But there's always something positive to look at in that. So, I think this great divide has been a real challenge on everybody. And, I try not to pay attention to too much news. A lot of it's negative and you never know what to believe. But at the end of the day, we're here. We woke up this morning and there was no hangover on this side. So, all I can say is my heart's full of gratitude. I get to live another day on this planet, and whatever it is, I always shoot out there. How can I be of service? So right now, how can I be of service?
Ryan, you're absolutely right. I know that a lot of people say, well, you need to be informed. You need to watch it. You need to know what's going on. It's like, well, if you watch the news, you're misinformed. If you don't watch the news, you're uninformed. And when you do watch the news, it's all depressing shit. And it really is. It's a tremendous downer on my mental health. And it's just like, oh, well, poor you. This country's going through that. That country's going through that. I understand that that's horrible, but I just figure I stay away from the news completely. If something happens, I'm sure I'll hear about it somewhere, somehow via social media or whatever. But for the sake of mental health, I avoid the news. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the relationship that we have with ourselves.
Exactly.
And, when we can have, a solid, relationship with our inner being, we can actually, expand that outwards, with that vibration of love and try to keep the fear-based mentality down to a decibel of and, just do the best we can to help our fellow man. And, it's, whatever we think about, we bring about. Whatever we focus on expands. So, if we're focusing on the so-called negative aspects of life, that's what's going to appear in our, physical reality. I believe, a firm believer that thoughts do become things and powerful things at that. So, that's, the whole law of vibration. Lots of people, law of attraction, they say whatever, when we get down to the spiritual principles and even the promises, if we can stay true to ourselves and be completely honest about what's going on inside, then, amazing things can happen outside, and feeling good inside obviously equals our point of attraction anyway. So, even through the anxiety, even through the depression and all that, I mean, you're looking at me right now, I'm showing up, I'm here, but at the end of the day, I mean, I got my days, even though I'm coming up on 6 years sobriety and 15 years in recovery. I mean, I'll have the blankets over my head, in my head. I'm a gong show. And, seeing the demons and tackling them at full force isn't always the funnest thing to do, as you know. So,
I was saying, boy, I think we could both,
especially when you've done so much blow.
That was my shit, man. That was my.
Well, I never had to pay for it. All my buddies were shipping it in from Colombia via Mexico into BC, and it's a big hub here, obviously. So it was like, I was the so-called king of weed on National Geographic, but no longer. With legalization and whatnot, but all my pals, they were bringing in a lot of the white stuff. So whenever I was out, it was a chip off the old block, and a couple pockets full of however many of the pure shit. And I was a circus sideshow for so many years. It was just like hell bent for leather, totally extreme. When you're making that kind of money as a young kid. Just mass quantities of cash coming in from the US and whatnot, with all those different trade routes and supplying, all the way down the West Coast, and then Chicago, New York, and, pioneering that industry from Canada with the hydroponics, getting down into the States and whatnot. I never sold marijuana in Canada. All my stuff went southbound. So, it was pretty crazy life. I was always had to be at the biggest and funnest, best parties in the world, which I'm grateful for, because they were unbelievable times until I crossed that bloody threshold. And that's when it became no fun, and no amount of money, no amount of anything could ever fill my inside of just with any happiness. It got to the point where, losing friends to murder, suicides, addictions, overdoses, you name it, going to prison for a couple years and whatnot. But on the flip side, after my incarceration, I wasn't a good boy right away, but, I got out and went back to my old ways for a little bit, and it definitely didn't make me happy, but it was what I knew. I was told that I was never to be allowed back in the United States again, ever, zilch, no chance ever again. I'm done. And, having a daughter down there was obviously a huge component of my burning desire of wanting to get back to the States to see her. And all my friends were down there too, for my hockey days and my smuggling days and whatnot. My home really felt like it was in the USA. And, by the grace of God, I got sober, got onto a different path, and got out of that game, escaped by the, skin of my teeth. When you're making a lot of money for not just yourself, but for a lot of people in those, organizations, so to speak, it's hard to leave. They say it's very hard to get out of the mafia. And that's what it was. And, I got out of it, and by the grace of a power greater than me, I found myself in Cambodia in 2012. And I'd actually written on a card 2 years previous. We talk about the law of vibration, law of attraction and whatnot, auto-suggestion, the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. I wrote on that card, I am so happy and grateful to be allowed back to the United States of America so I can see my daughter again, and to be of divine service to humanity. And on the back of that card, I love, faith, belief, and whatnot. And I swear to God, I laminated that card, and I read that card on the shitter. I read it in the shower. I mean, I read it with emotion and so much, I blended the emotions of faith, love, and sex. And that really gave me a direct line to say infinite intelligence. And I'm skipping rope in Laos, this tiny little country in Southeast Asia. We're filming a movie on happiness. And I get a phone call from an actress friend of mine. Her name is Serinda Swan. She lives down there in Los Angeles. And she said, we're doing this bike ride across Cambodia to help with the eradication of child sex slavery. I didn't even know what that was. I had no idea what human trafficking was or any of that stuff. Did a little bit of research after I said, I'm in. Mm-hmm. And, she said, let's capture the positive aspects in that film that you're doing on giving back. And that's, my life, for those 2 years, all this became centralized on giving back. And I'm a firm believer that you get what you give. And, you just don't have to have so much expectation of right away. It's giving it with, love and no expectation. And then the universe always corresponds to the nature of your desires. And so what happened was, I did this ride in 2012, which was, 10 years ago. And after visiting 5 different orphanages, and the organization that I did this for was run by a CNN hero and the United States government. Barbara Walters was involved, Queen Latifah, Ben Affleck, the list goes on. They got word that I was doing this ride across Cambodia. And, BC's biggest marijuana smuggling king of weed guy is now gone good. And, it was beautiful just to spend time with these kids and being in the moment of that and doing a ride with purpose. And every pedal was with a purpose for these children, and being exposed to seeing the severity of that actual decrepit business. Opened my heart to a whole different realm. And the day after, I flew to a place called Chiang Mai, Thailand. I woke up in the morning. I checked my BlackBerry at the time, the old BlackBerries there. And there was an email in from my father he was in Vancouver. I was there, obviously. And he said, "Today is a day we can rejoice, as you've been granted a full humanitarian pardon back down to the United States of America again." Wow. So what you believe is true. And if you pound that into your subconscious mind, anything can happen. So, and it
did
happened.
You know that was in the works?
Nope. I had no idea. Absolutely no idea. It was in the works in my own mind, and it was in the works of my heart, my body, my soul. And I couldn't have had any of that if I wasn't clean, sober, and had the clarity to actually, move forward into the unknown, so to speak. And it's just that, just having that faith in the infinite, so to speak.
Well, let's talk about the path to it. Of course,
oh, fuck.
In addition to, I know there's some stuff there, but in addition to, obviously, you were a hockey player, which makes me wonder, was that how you started making some of the connections?
Yes.
So let's kind of maybe jump back a little bit then to childhood. A lot of us, through our conversations, we're finding that the gateway drug, people always say, oh, it's marijuana, or it's your first drink, or it's this. Man, we're finding it's really trauma. Was there something with childhood that really kind of spawned this?
I think we should get some shirts made saying trauma drama. But God, I mean, I'm not going to complain about, my parents. Wonderful people. My dad was, he was a national high jump champion here in Canada. Just a workhorse, workaholic, real successful guy, kind father that just wanted the best for his kid. And, obviously hockey just came easy to me. It was my dominating dream. That's all I did on my spare time. And when I skipped school all the time was, stick handle a ball or a puck. And it was just everything. It was the love of my life. I wanted to be the best hockey player in the world, beat Gretzky's records and all that kind of stuff. And, not saying I was going to be the next Gretzky, because that's every kid's dream here in Canada. Sure. But, I had all the skills and all the tools. I was top prospect, one of the top prospects in the world at my age at that time. Left home at 16 after a lot of, there was so much pressure, and you don't really realize that, as a child. And, these days, I think it's getting maybe a little bit better, but the bullying that went along with it was, you just kind of take it, and you don't realize until you get older how it affects you. The jealousy, the envy, from the other players, the parents and whatnot, that all plays into your overall, just your psyche, your well-being, everything. And, I left home, not being a total gong show that I turned into. It was no drinking really. I'd had a few sips here and there, tied a couple on before then, but, I was so focused on my dream that nothing was going to deviate me from that path. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that my first year away from home, I was the youngest guy on the team. And, there was a lot of abuse, especially emotionally. And, being in a dressing room with, a bunch of other guys that are all trying to make it. I'm 16. The average age on the team was 19 and 20. And so I became kind of the target to be picked on. And the coach picked up on that a lot too. He wasn't the nicest guy in the world. And I can say that with, just being truthful. I could fight, but I hate fighting. I was an offensive player that loved to use his creative faculties. And, there was, I got pissed on. I don't want to play any victimization here whatsoever. And I was trying to fit in and I didn't know how to fit in. I felt so different from those other players and I became scared to walk into the dressing room. He would get me to punch this burlap punching bag until my knuckles bled. And, he wouldn't play me. It was like, he took pride almost in making me feel like crap. And I know no one can make you feel like crap but yourself. But when you're that young and naive, and so that kind of led me on my way to, hockey and drinking and just, that party, just crazy ass lifestyle, that celebrity status you have in the small town. And then, that leading into professional hockey is just, it's crazy. I mean, of all the professional sports, you take Major League Baseball, NFL, whatever, soccer, hockey takes the cake as far as the culture behind the actual game that we see on the canvas of ice. And I was the brunt of a lot of stuff, but it taught me a lot about how to actually treat people, that I didn't have to be the bully the next year. And, even it's given me a great platform, even into the now, where I can actually give back, talk about mental health, bullying, all these kinds of stuff that need to be eradicated from the game. It was a lot of lessons, that's for sure.
Did it affect your game at all? Like being bullied
Absolutely.
and pissed on, and like, did it make you almost kind of, you know what, fuck this, I'm done with this? Did you ever get there?
100%. There was times I didn't want to let my dad down. I didn't want to let my community down. But number one, I didn't want to let myself down. So I wouldn't talk about it with too many people. I was isolating by myself a lot of the time, unless I was trying to, fit in at one of these parties and whatnot. And, I wasn't really, I wasn't used to all these girls all over. Yeah, it's like, all the groupies and whatnot that kind of goes along with it too. So, I was, I lost my way. I just didn't know really who I was. I would, then finally, I called home, talked to my dad. I was like, Dad, this is, I'm not happy. My coach is sitting me on the bench half the time and I'm collecting slivers in my ass because all I'm doing is watching and I'm not able to actually showcase my talent. Mm-hmm. And, then the injuries played in, concussions, broken shoulders, collarbones, hands, you name it, painkillers. Then, you mix in the booze, the partying. Like that whole lifestyle was just, it was complete insanity. I never thought I would ever go down that road. Shit happens. And, it's like I said, it's, I wouldn't take any of it back, just like I wouldn't take anything back from anything that I've done in my life. Even smuggling marijuana across the border. Yeah, I paid the ultimate price, 2 years in prison. Cause and effect. It's, things happen. They all happen for a reason that lead us to the present moment. And now I'm able to, just do the best I can to make a positive difference in the lives of others, especially in the mental health space. And, we can talk about the journey that I'll be embarking on starting May 25th. So.
And I'm glad you brought up the point too, is people, we talk about football with the concussion rates and what we've seen players after that, American football. I even know for soccer too, people don't realize there's concussion, but hockey isn't talked about enough. And seen many players come out that they struggled with alcoholism or addiction or something after, or anything to numb those pains, because it is such a rough, tough sport. People ask me oftentimes, what are some of the best, in your opinion, athletes in the world? Hockey is like up there. People don't realize that peak performance and the frequency that you guys are playing, let alone the injuries. When do you, like, in reflecting, look at like, boy, this is where the rails started to fall off here?
I think it was my draft year. Well, actually, I don't think I know. This is, it was 7 games into my draft year, and I was going full speed, which is quite fast on blades there. You see how fast those players move. And, I was cutting towards the net, and I cut an edge, and I got hit extremely hard from behind, about 5 feet away from the boards. And I tucked my chin in underneath my my sternum here, kind of, and broke my shoulder in 3 places. My collarbone dislocated it all at once, and I was out like a light for almost 2 minutes with a major concussion that wasn't treated at the time. They treated the shoulder, they treated the collarbone, but they didn't treat the actual concussion. And I wasn't able to really bounce back from that ever to the capability that I could have. I wasn't able to see I couldn't see the puck right. I developed a lot of ADD, where I was just like, what the hell is going on here? I used to have a photographic memory. Playing hockey, you're using all 6 senses. You got to know where all 6 players are on both sides of the rink. It's a very you're using your mind out there, mind, body, and soul, everything. I started just not, my perception was just completely off. And I started getting really scared about that. I was, like, what's going on here? I started thinking differently. And I thought it was just, it's just the way I'm growing up. Something's going on with my brain. Many years later, I was diagnosed with bipolar. Later to find out the bipolar wasn't bipolar, it was post-concussions that had never been treated. And I worked with, I still continue to work with a doctor who's at the head of his field of neurology called, his name is Dr. Ashkan Jalili. And he did a lot of his studying down there in Los Angeles. And he said that I've had over 50 concussions in and out of hockey, sport related and unsport related. But that one concussion that I took after SPECT scans and whatnot, I actually was drilled at the crown of my head, and a bleed went down all the way to the amygdala. And the amygdala is the core center of the brain, which is the seat of our emotions. So basically, for the last 30 some odd years, I've been kind of like on the fight or flight thing. Fight most of the time, so I really got to try to calm my nervous system down the best I can on a regular basis. That's with psychotherapy, a lot of work with at the concussion center, being healed through electricity and whatnot. Different ways of using our visuals. And, thank God I don't have to pick up a drink today, because, I wouldn't be alive here talking to you guys today. Drugs and alcohol definitely played a big factor in, expediting, I would say, what was actually going on upstairs there, because there was so many headaches and pains and just like, the feeling of like, what the hell's going on? And the only thing that was actually making me feel better a lot of the time was, drugs and alcohol. And then I would come out of a 3 or 4 day bender in Las Vegas or wherever the hell I was in the world, because I'm all over the map, and it was just brutal. Like literally my head felt like it was going to cut, like my brain was going to seep out of my ears. So, glad those days are over, and I don't have to, put a bill or a straw, and it just came into a finger pinch at the end where I was just stuffing it up my nose, or all the MDMA. And God, I've done every drug under the sun, mixed with I don't know how many Texas Mickeys and you name it. Just a circus sideshow.
All of that being said, how do you feel about hockey today?
You know what? To me, it's one of the most amazing, beautiful, creative games in the world. Right. But you get onto the whole PTSD thing of life. Sure. When I watch it, there's a lot of triggers that triggers me back to the past, and that was my dream. And I see these young kids there, and I kind of wish I was still doing what I was doing. At the same time, I got a real love-hate relationship with the game. But at the same time, Where I'm at now, especially, with, going across the country in 2019, I have so many brothers that I've, throughout the game that I'd met that are, so many wonderful friendships that I made. The game will always be so close to my heart, but
Sure.
the off ice situations with, take away the hazing, but all the good friendships that I made along the way is just like, you can't replace that. And it took me all over the United States, all over Canada, all over the world, really. And, so the education that I picked up, beyond the game is irreplaceable. And, these days, being able to go into other hockey locker rooms and just, being on the public speaking platform of, say, a TEDx or whatever I'm called to do, any media platforms that I do when I'm, say, going across the country or something like that, I get to educate these kids, young men, I should say, and just try to lead them on the right path and give them, some motivation and some inspiration, and, just give them my own true lived experience on, what the ramifications are about, even the way you treat your players, like we're only as good as our weakest link. So it's very important in anything, not just hockey, not just, life in general. It's, everything has to be working in harmony, in unison, in synchronicity for things to flow in a natural state to attain success, so to speak.
What point then do you start with all this? And I'm glad you brought that up about the only thing that seemed to take it away was a drink, a drug, or whatever it was. But ultimately, maybe for people that aren't struggling, but want to understand someone who is an addict, why? That is why we go to the thing to numb or take away the pain or escape. But yes, ultimately it's our destruction. But you got into the drug trade. How did this come about? I mean, because your story is pretty crazy. Like you said, it was a social media post you did that there was no amount of selling drugs, money, or anything that was going to fill that void, because it never did. You keep chasing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. The disease of more.
Right.
What happened was the hockey players partied with the drug dealers and the fast lane scene. And I was 17 at the time. I was playing in Tacoma, Washington. BC Bud was just at the beginning of, all the hydroponic indoor grow ops were going on. Not a lot of people at that point were sending stuff across the border. And I had no idea that there was even a business like that, to be honest with you.
Sure.
And one of my bros came down to watch a game, and I said, make sure you bring some good bud because there's nothing here that I can get that's good. And he brought down like a half ounce that he stuck into an Old Spice deodorant stick. And, so we're at this party. There was probably 100+ people. It was at the University of Washington, UW. And, I'm rolling up this sticky, icky green hydro bud from BC that was like probably low grade compared to what it is now. And, next thing I know, I got like 4 or 5 guys over my shoulder saying, like, where'd you get that? Where'd that come from? And I was like, oh, this is the only kind of stuff that we get back home where I'm from. He's like, dude, that's so hard to get. And I was like, oh yeah. And it kind of just like, went over my consciousness for a minute and, or about a year or so. I got back that summer. I was 18, met a few people and, played another year down in the States for my junior hockey. I just turned 19. Some of my old bros, so to speak, were about 3 months into starting the biz. And that biz was obviously, shipping across the line in different ways and forms. And I did my first border run at, I just turned 19 and had a hockey bag and a hockey stick and a bunch of pounds in the back of the bag. Yeah, just no fear whatsoever. And, it was the most money I made in one day. And I was like, how can I do this next? When's the next time I do this? Seeing
like
all
from Blow. This is literally this is how Johnny Depp and Blow. Have you seen that movie?
Yes. Yeah.
It sounds just like that. It's like,
it is
this weed, man. Oh, dude, this is what we have. Light bulb.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 1 pound turned into like 10 pounds, 10 pounds turned into 20. 20 turned into 100, 100 turned into 150 to 200 to 300 to 400 to 500. And then at one point it was like thousands a week when it got to the pinnacle. And, that's when it got, it got huge. When it got so big, it was too much to handle. Having to find safe houses to put, I had no room to put the money. Our best year was, we pulled in over $100 million worth of marijuana money. I mean, that wasn't all mine. I had to feed a lot of mouths along the way, people that were, working for me here, down south and whatnot, all the, fully encrypted BlackBerries on a server in Costa Rica, the many ways of, the boats, the Cessna planes, the helicopters, the Zodiacs, the kayaks, you name it, the hiking bushwhacks that we found with helicopter aerial maps. And, it was crazy. I'm going to say, like, I had an absolute blast doing that for a while until it got ugly, where everybody started doing it. Like, we were the pioneers. My group was that first group that really, started doing it on a big scale. And, when people see how much money you're making, next thing you know, you become a target.
Oh yeah.
And nobody's ever bulletproof, and someone's always trying to take you down to get to the top, or whatever that looks like. But for me, I just the fear thing just starts setting in. And the gang life is not my deal. But yeah, I associated myself with a lot of gangsters, and that obviously, prison, being around the Mexican mafia, the Crips, the Bloods, you name it. And I think it was my sense of humor that got me through. And, lucky enough, I was able to come out of that deadly game unscathed. Now with legalization, I'm allowed to talk about it. And, hence being on the National Geographic thing there.
Right.
That was a little nerve-wracking. 21 hours in front of camera after riding across Canada for mental health awareness, and now I'm talking about my past. It brought up a lot, and with all due respects to National Geographic, they touched on maybe a pinpoint of the actual everything that went down. So on this next ride that I'm doing, going across Canada and the U.S., we have a wonderful producer that's jumped on board by the name of Charles Maddox. And he only focuses in on humanitarian award-winning films. So we're going to be doing a full-on doc series going across Canada, then the United States afterwards. And, so I'll be able to really, delve deep into those past so-called traumatic wounds of that industry. So it'll be a lot of healing for myself, and also open the doorways, the floodgates for other people to tell their stories, and really try to reframe the way humanity looks at mental health and views mental health, and allowing the misunderstood to be understood. Because at the end of the day, we're all going through something. We're all fighting something internally. We're human. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, and being in these physical bodies isn't the easiest thing in the world sometimes, is it? So
no. Sometimes it can downright suck because we get what we get, or what we've the result of our choices throughout life. So you talked about your father mentioning your pardon, which is so awesome to have people know that you can turn your life around. Ryan, you are an example of it. But what was the relationship with your folks when you were doing all this shit? I'm assuming that was an incredibly fractured relationship that you had to rebuild too.
They were aware of what I was doing, and, obviously they weren't super proud. But at the same time, there was nothing anybody could say at that time. When you're winning the lottery pretty much every week, bringing in, that kind of currency, being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want, and that was all manifested through thought too. It was like, you see the amount of money and the freedom that you can have with that kind of money. And being that young, there's no really holding you back. And, I remember, being in the kitchen of my parents' place saying, I'm in my early 20s, and I'm like, you know what, you only live once, and I'm going to do and have and be everything that I want to do in life. I'm going to do. I'm just going to live life to the absolute fullest. And you know what? I can say at where I stand now, I've been to 70 plus countries. I've really lived a life. And so marijuana and that whole business, it gave me a lot, but it took a lot as well. But at the end of the day, it taught me a lot. And it taught me a lot about relationships. And, the relationship, obviously with myself, but with my parents, even though they looked down on it, they were still, they spent a little bit of that money. And it's hard not to. Temptation makes a fool out of all of us, that in many aspects. And when your father is seeing you bring in like that kind of money and burying it in the backyard and shoving it in one of the safes, and then I had to have people set up in apartments all over the bloody city because I literally didn't know where to put all this money. That was my biggest problem, is I didn't know where to put all my money. And hence my spending habit of over $150,000, $200,000 a month, paying for everybody, having to be the man, attaching myself to an identity that wasn't me, which is a massive ego fueled on, I wouldn't say I was the greedy guy, because I was just wanting to give and to have all the people around me have the kind of life that I could provide. So, yeah, I mean, it was fueling my ego, but at the same time, it wasn't a greediness back of it. I always still look to myself as Ryan, the fun guy, hockey party dude, not the gangster guy all those guys were surrounding me and I was with and highly involved with. At the end of the day, you are who you hang out with. And so I was looked at as one of those guys. Lived experience, now it's, I can talk about it candidly and openly, like, to you guys. And it's just one of those things where I picked up a massive education on life, with not just with hockey, prison, weed, mental health, you name it. It's like, I can say this very, I don't want to say I can say this humbly, but I actually really can say humbly, I can pretty much touch on everything in life that's going on right now, because I've already been through it. I've been through the depths of hell, and had my freedom taken away, left at a young age. I've been homeless. I've been a millionaire many times over, lost it, got it back. But here I stand today with a definite purpose of giving back. And that's all I stand for, really. At the end of the day, if I can just help one person, and that can have a domino effect to help other people, then I'm stern and sturdy in my purpose. And, that's a lot of what's going on right now is, in the planning stages for, doing something really special for humanity that's peaceful, with all the tragedies and with everything that's going on right now with, with the pandemic, with what's going now over in the Ukraine, the resistance, people so scared, they're scared of their own shadow, for crying out loud, half these people these days. I'm not doing this to try to be famous or anything like that. I've already had my story out there. It's out there. I'm out there. So if I can use that to my benefit to bring people together, then what's better than that, really, at the end of the day, when you can see people smiling, and that's my dream. Through this ride, everybody is actually welcome to join in. It's not just Ryan's ride, that's, I'm riding across the country, look at me, and I'm going to do these interviews and I'm on magazines and this and that and whatever. No, nothing like that. So what it's going to show is people coming together and unifying as one. Right. The oneness that we all share collectively, that we're all attached to nothing but connected to everything.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, Forrest Gump, he had to run just to run. He just had to do it. It's kind of like that. What do you think the biggest issue or stigma around mental health and trying to get people to understand this stuff? Because years and years ago, it would be if a person's bipolar or anxiety, depression, or whatever, just, that person's crazy, which thank goodness we've moved past that. It's, if someone's having a heart issue and they're taking a medication for it, you don't shame them. But if someone's bipolar or something, there's people that still shame someone that might have to take a medication or something. So what do you see as some of those biggest struggles in really educating people on mental health issues?
I believe that there should be absolutely no stigma whatsoever when it comes down to mental health. Everything starts up at the top anyways. Our body follows our mind. So at the end of the day, cancer, any other disease, is there a stigma around diabetes? No. Is there a stigma around multiple sclerosis? No. Why should there be a stigma around anxiety that's making somebody feel dissociated, out of body, feeling off or whatever, alcoholism, anything that's, in the mental health realm? There should be absolutely no stigma. We have all these days, like, here in Canada, it's, I don't want to disrespect Bell Let's Talk Day, 1 day a year. Are you kidding me? Every single day of every single moment should be a mental health day, check up from the neck up, whatever you want to call it. But there should be absolutely no shame whatsoever when it comes down to, if you're feeling off in any way, if you have to go to medication, if you want to take that route and that's going to help you with the neurological chemical imbalance that you may have, then that's the way you got to go. I do it the natural way. I'm not on any antidepressants. I tried the bipolar lithium there for a while when I went across Canada, and it was bleeding through my skin like battery acid. So that's actually how I realized that I wasn't bipolar. I took bipolar meds for a little bit and they didn't work. I thought they were working, but really I was getting the natural endorphins by riding my bike across these countries and fueling my brainstem and my vagus nerve with natural endorphins and having a healthy diet. And, I'm a firm believer that, associating ourselves with positive, like-minded people that rise us up is of utmost benefit to our overall well-being. We take on the dominating thoughts and actions a lot of the people that we hang out with. I woke up today feeling a little bit off. But at the same time, I was like, I'm super stoked. I'm excited. I get to go on Knockin Doorz Down and share my story a little bit, and maybe somebody will listen to it and get a little bit of inspiration that, if I can do it, if Ryan Phillips can do it, anybody can do it. Because, I tell you, it's I'm not unique in any ways, but, like I said, I've done a few things, and but I don't plan on giving up anytime soon. I really want to ramp things up. This movement is near and dear to my heart, not just for Canada, but for humanity. The one thing I do know is that we need more peace, more serenity, collectively. And that doesn't matter if you're an alcoholic, an addict, or whatever. We're all suffering in some way because of what's been going on here the last 2.5 years. And people are sick of it. I know I'm sick of it. Like, I am just literally done with this. And so it's, this is a weekend thing. Teamwork makes the dream work. Come March 25th, dip those wheels in the Pacific and shoot down to the Atlantic and get her done again, and then start off in New York, and then come and visit you boys in LA. That's where I'll be finishing when I get down to the US side. So, but it's heart-wrenching to see how many people are falling to the wayside with this and really giving up hope. And so if we can give hope to people, at the end of the day, it's all about hope. And, using our energy and balancing that energy and be able to expand that energy outward so the world can see how much awareness can come through definite action. So, at the end of the day, Ryan, the weed guy, the weed smuggler that has a story probably crazier than George Jung from Blow. I can guarantee you that. I was in negotiations actually with HBO to get a series out with the whole life story, but I don't think anybody can play me. So
I was just going to ask, that was one of our questions, is who would play you in a movie?
Hey, Ryan,
exactly.
I'm not the best actor, but I'll give it a shot. I didn't study it.
Well, it's funny. I was at Universal Studios about 5 years ago, and they were trying to negotiate that. And one of the producers that I was talking to, he's like, "Oh, I think Channing Tatum would be a good guy." And I'm like, that would mean I would have to teach him this and that and this and this and this and that. I'm like, all the lingo that went along with it. I'm like, I just don't think anybody could do it the way. I mean,
Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, he'd be a good sidekick.
Yeah.
And he's an incredible human being. Actually, I met him years ago. He probably wouldn't even remember when I was living in LA for quite some time when I got my pardon. And, so I met a lot of, known people down there, so to speak. And, a lot of people wanted to get this whole story back then, but I just wasn't ready to talk about it because there was a lot of healing that was surrounded around this whole thing. And, now I feel at peace with it. I'm able to talk about it freely because the weed is free. It's been, there's no there's no stigma around marijuana anymore. So
what was the collapse of essentially your empire, your industry when you hit prison?
Okay, so we were about to do a run through the bushwhack there. It was the summertime, so it was very inexpensive for our transportation costs to get it across through the mountains. And we found a route that was about 2.5 hours outside of Vancouver. And we connected the dots with these helicopter aerial maps. And so it entailed having dirt bikes on the other side of this fence, 12 and a half kilometers, which would be about 8 miles up a logging road. And then what would happen was it connected to a state park on the other side. And I actually went back to play hockey for the last 18 games of that last season. I wasn't feeling good about myself for what I was doing. And I was like, maybe I'll give this another shot. My daughter's down there. Maybe things can get patched up with her mom and I. And, I had a lot of money sitting around. It was just like, I don't know if I really want to go deeper into this. I wasn't knees deep quite yet, to where it went. One of my guys that I played hockey with down south, we grew up together. He asked me if he could be one of my drivers. Well, first of all, he asked me what the hell I was up to. He's like, how are you making all this money? And I was like, don't worry about it. It's just, I kind of shrugged it off. I'm like, you don't want it. It's, something that's not in your wheelhouse, so to speak. And he just kept pressing and pressing and pressing. And then I was like, oh God, I get home. Sure enough, the first day I'm home from, the end of hockey season, which I said I only played 18 games. I'm this place called the Cactus Club. I'm on the patio. Next thing I know, I'm sucking back sociables left and right. I'm hammered off my tree, and the bushwhack's wide open. I need a driver. I need to start making some bank again, and called my hockey buddy there, who asked if he could be a driver. And sure as all heck. He started driving for me, did about 6 runs, and saw the kind of money that was coming in, and he got really jealous. And at this point, I wasn't touching anything on this side or that side. I was just merely orchestrating and conducting the whole business with the, obviously masterminding the situation. And he pulled a ripoff on me. I had no idea it was him. It was an inside job. He kicked in one of my safe houses. There was about $280,000 worth of marijuana in Canadian dollars. That would have been about probably $475 at the time, US dollars. Kicked in the door. I was freaked out, scared for my life, thinking that someone was out to get me. And my partner at the time was a very serious individual that my hikers had no idea about. And that night there was a meeting. A couple bullets got shot into a speaker. Guns were pointed at some of the people's heads and whatnot. People are all freaking out. He knew I didn't do it. And, I was just, now I owe half the money that was lost and scammed. What do we do? I'm freaking out. And I said, later I went and met up with him later that night. And I said, look, we can make this money back in one shot. I'll go with them this time and make sure nothing bad happens. And 2 days later, we had 100 pounds, 103 pounds to be exact, ready to go. And I did the hike with these guys, and I just had a feeling, my intuition that day. I didn't know the ramifications that would happen if I was busted on the other side of the border, but I just felt that something was off. And he got followed from the Bellingham airport, which I told him never go to the airport to rent a vehicle, as you know, they're very suspicious there. The DEA always watch the airports. I said, always go to a different rental agency to rent a vehicle to come and pick the hikers up. He didn't listen. He got followed. We're on the Mount Baker Highway on the other side of the border with 103 pounds inside the trunk. And next thing you know, helicopters above us, pulled over. It's the DEA, da 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 da. Head plastered to the side of the road after 5 minutes of saying, oh, well, should we make a run for it? Well, next thing you know, if we made a run for it, we'd probably get shot at. So cuffed and chucked into the back of a Ford Expedition. And, that's where the legal process began. County jail, went to federal, and, did my time. Found out the day after that it was him that pulled the ripoff on me. And, he went MIA, obviously he was probably scared for his life. I forgave him. I ran into him a few years later and I was like, you got nothing to worry about. Things happen. And, that's kind of just how it went down. After that, I see when I went to prison, it was like literally going to college or university for criminals. I met older guys, better connections. I got clean and sober. I was clean and sober for almost two years while I was in there. It was over 500 days I was in there, maximum federal penitentiary. Didn't see the light of day for all that time. And, but I met, some wonderful people in there. Not every criminal's bad, but what you see in there is bad. Worse than TV. I'm telling you. I don't wish prison on anybody, especially if they haven't done something super bad. I mean, having your freedom taken away is probably why I'm having maybe a difficult time these days watching people, with all the freedoms that have been taken away from us. I'm kind of used to it because I went through it way back, but I see other people suffering and it hits my heart. But, I got out and I had all these connections, and 3 days later I was knees deep back in the business, and 3 months later I was a millionaire again. And, that went on for a few years. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger. But then it was like, you know what? All these friends that were getting murdered, and it just didn't matter. All those millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that came in, none of it made me happy. And so it was time to make a decision back. It was about 2009. I was like, not happening anymore. And things just weren't working. They just stopped working because I stopped working. And I was living in this big mansion up in, it was like one of the most affluent areas in where I live here in Vancouver. And I had mirrored ceilings on the wall mirrored ceilings, mirrors on the wall. My room was massive. It was ridiculous. And I had this big party the night before, and there was, DJ in the sunken living room. There was about 400 people there that night. And I woke up all alone. And, I had so much nose pack in me. I was picking my nose, it's bleeding. And I was like, I just kind of hit the wall. And I could not look at myself in the mirror. Went into the shower and I broke down. I fell down on my knees. I was bawling my eyes out. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. And, every time, there was a few times that I was kind of like, tried to get convinced into doing this or doing that again. And it just never worked. It never set well. So it's, crazy story, but, now it's, something I can reflect on and, like I said, cause and effect. I know why I can connect the dots like a puzzle really, and just put it together and be like, now I know why that happened. And I never thought I'd say I'm grateful that I went to prison, but I am. I actually got to see it from, going from professional athlete and having all of what looks great on the surface to only having to deal with myself in there and having to protect myself in many aspects, but also knowing that I could chameleonize myself really into many different, cultures and whatnot, even in there to get by. So it just, it showed how resilient the human spirit could be.
Well, before we get to our random questions, I want to ask first, what's a DSM? You got the cool infinity symbol.
Oh,
hat and shirt for people that are listening on audio. We'll hopefully have look at the social media photos up there with Ryan. But yeah, what's that brand about there you're wearing?
Oh, this is what I slept in last night. It's my pajamas. I'm just kidding. Divine Source Matter, DSM. I believe that we all come from the divine source. Whatever religion you want to believe in, I believe in source energy. That we connect ourselves to source energy. So, it's got the infinity and then there's the matter. So divine source matter. And then we got the DSM hats and whatnot. And we also have a CBD line that's launching here in the next couple of weeks down in the United States. It won't be available here in Canada. So it's, divine source matter CBD and, the apparel line is being launched here in the next week. So that's globally. And 10% goes back into mental health.
If people want to know more about you, find you, website, social media, how can they do that?
You know what? Right now, Instagram's great. Instagram, Ryan Phillips 888. And, talk about mental health and all that kind of stuff. I'm an open book. If you send me a nice message, I'll get back to you very nicely. And, I'm here to help. That's it.
Well, we're going to jump to some fun here, some random questions.
All right. Let's
Mikey,
let the fun roll, boys.
What's your favorite hockey movie?
Slapshot.
How could it not be?
Mine's Miracle.
I partied my ass off with the Hanson twins, like two specific times. They were fucking hilarious. They were doing the whole they were doing the pre-game show with the cake and everything like that. And we ended up going to Hooters after the game. And so I met them and oh my God, I was 20 years old the first time I met those guys. And I was like, okay, I'm partying with the Hanson brothers. They're at my apartment now. And we're just getting gunned. And I think I was really late for practice that next morning. But next question.
All right. In your opinion, top three Canadian athletes.
Top three Canadian athletes, I'd have to say Wayne Gretzky, Elvis Stoico, who's a very good friend of mine. He was a world champion figure skater.
Yeah.
And Mario Lemieux.
I was going to give you 5 because I was hoping you'd throw Bret Hart in there, but
I used to get compared to him, actually. You know what?
Really?
You know what? Hey, he was all heart. Let's throw the Hart Foundation in there as well. The two brothers. There's 5.
Yeah. No, him and Owen were some of my favorites. You definitely, now that you mention it, I could see it.
Owen. That's what all my Chinese buddies used to call me Owen. They'd be like, Owen. I mean, maybe I did look like when I was all jacked up on steroids, maybe, because there was a time.
Right on.
If you could have dinner with anybody in the entire world, living or dead, who would it be?
Tupac.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Well, he wasn't just a rapper. I really listened to the spiritual side of life that he ignites with his passion and soul that comes from his voice. So I'd have to say Tupac. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Time. Tupac, incredible.
Plus, I know every one of his songs by heart too.
All right. How about this? You're on a deserted island and you can take one movie with you and one album. What would they be?
I'm going to go off a whim on this one. I'll say Avatar and Pink Floyd, Off the Wall.
Okay. We've gotten some Floyd, but never Avatar. Why Avatar?
Actually, you know what? I'd have to say All Eyes on Me, Tupac.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, man, I think you got to go with Tupac on that.
I have to go with Tupac. And I'm a Biggie fan too, believe it or not. So maybe Tupac would actually still be alive on the deserted island. So I wouldn't even need it.
Well, there you go.
Rumor has it he still is. You never know.
100%. Yeah, Machiavelli in the house, right?
Yeah.
Him, Biggie, Elvis. Who else is that? Michael Jackson on that? I'm guessing maybe.
Oh, they're all still alive, no matter what.
Well, Ryan, we appreciate this so much for coming on, sharing your story.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And hope. But if you could leave anyone listening with any thoughts or any wisdom, what might that be?
I'd have to say that don't let mental illness, so to speak, define you. Allow you to define you. And I'll borrow a quote from one of my favorite authors of all time, that every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. And that's Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. So, yeah, I'll and you know what? Through my adversity, I found my authenticity. So we'll let it go at that. More to be revealed, eh?
Absolutely. Mike, you got anything else?
No, I'm going home.
On that note, keep knocking doors down.
Keep knocking doors down, boys. I love ya.